What's up, everybody, and welcome into the H&M Trucking Podcast, episode number 68. I'm your host, Marcus, and so happy to have all of you with me today. This episode that we're going to get into is going to be an absolute riot. I know that because, let's just say this. Sometimes we learn in trucking, at least I have on this podcast, that truth really is stranger than fiction. And what do I mean by that? Well, that the stories that you actually hear drivers tell you, hey, I saw this firsthand. I was a part of this. I witnessed it. It happened to me, whatever the case may be. Some of these stories you could not write. They just aren't something that you would come up with to put down on a piece of paper and, put into a movie or on a podcast or anything like that. And that's exactly why we decided to do this episode. I was talking to Eve and Sherry, and they said, listen, so much of this stuff falls into the category of you can't make this shit up, okay? And excuse my language here. As you might have noticed, the episode is titled You Can't Make This Stuff Up. And we will go for the stuff angle quite often, but every now and then it's going to cause us to drop an S-bomb on this show this week because you really cannot make some of the stuff up that we've heard about. Let me start out by giving you an example of a story that we can tell on this podcast, but we have to tell behind a veil of secrecy in some way, shape, or form. Not because the company would get in trouble or this particular driver would get in trouble, but just because sometimes it's better to keep things behind closed doors as far as details are concerned. But this employee of H&M Trucking was telling me that they had fielded a call at some point in time because a driver was out on his route, working, everything was fine. He was wearing some cutoffs, all right? You guys might have seen him, a cowboy. He wants to go and take a dip in the river, but all he's got's his Wranglers. Well, he's got another pair of Wranglers at home, man. Hack those things off at the knee, and now you got a pair of board shorts. Except for this particular driver had hacked his shorts all the way off, I don't know, up at the pockets, higher than the pockets. I think the pockets were probably burnt at this time because what I heard was that he was wearing, and I quote, Daisy Duke shorts. Way up the leg. Way too high for anybody that looks like me or I guess any male, in my opinion. I've never been a shorty shorts guy, okay? I saw a picture of my dad in the 80s before I was born in a pair of OP shorts, the Ocean Pacific, those old corduroys that only had about a 3-inch inseam, and it worked for him. I mean, he was out on a beach in Hawaii, and he looked great. Never have I once in my life had a tan that was worthy of the shorty shorts. And I just don't have the legs, the genetics. I don't know. I didn't get that side. I didn't get the side of my dad's genetics that allowed shorty shorts. So I'm an at or below the knee guy. But this driver was out with Daisy Dukes on. And you're thinking probably, well, why was there a complaint? He's just driving around comfortable. He just likes to have his thighs out a little bit. And, it's free air conditioning, right? Well, it just so happened that his gum was out, if you know what I mean. And look, I'm not going to be any more descriptive than that. Put it together. Daisy Duke shorts, cut off at the pockets, and your gum is out. And I don't mean juicy fruit. So take that for what you will, but those are the types of stories that we're going to get into today on the H&M Trucking Podcast, and I can't wait. In just a few minutes here, Denny Stone is going to join me. Of course, my awesome co-host, with all the millions of miles that he has under his belt, he's got some good stories for us. We're also going to talk to Sherry Vogler about a story that she has that you literally can't make up. I mean, this one, I thought I was going to be in traction after she sent me the email. I was laughing so hard. I had to work my neck out a little bit. My jaw was locked up. That one's great. We've also got our buddy Tom Woods coming back for another appearance. It's been a little bit since we've talked to Tom, and I know that Tom's got a bunch of stuff that you can't make up. So we'll talk to Tom, and then a little bit later in the episode, we'll also be talking to H&M driver Arvin Knox Jr., who has one of the kind of stories that you can't make up that won't necessarily make you laugh or make you cry. It will make you just kind of wide-eyed and sit there and listen because it's a story that everyone knows about. Or I should say this, it's attached to a story that everyone knows about. This whole 5 minutes has been nothing but a tease and a story about a dude wearing Daisy Dukes that were too short. So I'm going to clam up and we're going to get to these interviews. If you want to be on one of these podcasts just like this, it's really simple. All you got to do is touch base with your driver manager, your dispatcher. If you're in the terminal there or you're out on the road, you hear this like, man, that sounds fun. Get in touch with anybody that you can. If you know a driver that's been on the show before, it's very likely that they'll have my phone number or at least be able to put you in touch with somebody that does have my number. And of course, as always, my amazing liaisons back at the H&M terminal, Eve Essery and Sherry Vogler, will also put you in touch with me. So if this episode really makes you feel like you've got a story to tell, we can always come back around and do another one. I feel like recurring You Can't Make This Stuff Up episode will probably be very popular if we kept doing them. So think about your stories that you have while you're listening to this episode and get at me so we can get you on to tell your wild stories about how you cannot make this stuff up. Let's get to it.
From Omaha, Nebraska, to whatever lane you're driving, this is the H&M Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Oh man, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you're tuning into a bunch of big smiles because we just kind of were talking off the air about this story. Joined here by Sherry Vogler, who is instrumental in our podcast here at H&M. We are constantly leaning on you, Sherry, for things, and we just so much appreciate you for everything you do for us. But I'm very appreciative of the story that you've brought to us today. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. How are you today, Sherry?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, last week, we got away with something. And we were actually just kind of talking about that a little bit. And I just informed Denny right here in real time that, hey, the rodeo sex joke made it through editing and it is officially in the podcast stream. Those of you that listen every week know about it. So good job to you, Denny. It was a really good description of the joke. And you skirted all the stop signs there. I was very proud of you.
Well, I'm okay.
I'll take
I didn't think it was going to make it, honestly.
Maybe I shouldn't be editing.
Actually, no, Sherry. We want you there. You're the right person to have, and evidenced by this story that you brought us today. Now, obviously, we're talking about you can't make this stuff up today on the air, or you can't make this shit up. I don't know if those are going to make it through either. You might hear a bunch of bleeps in this episode because we're going to try to keep it as friendly as we can, but we're looking for crazy stories. And, a lot of crazy stories that you hear in trucking sometimes are a little bit more unfortunate or tragic. This one, fortunately, nobody gets hurt. And I will just tell you right now that the back of my neck hurt when Sherry sent me this email. And after that, I'm going to step the hell out of the way because I've already been blabbing for like 3 minutes here. So Sherry, tell us your story that has to do with you can't make this stuff up.
Okay, so when you sent that email out, it was definitely the first story that came to mind. And it was not, it was shortly after I had started in the trucking industry. And I was, running orientation and made some friends. And I love all the drivers that come in and we form such a bond. So, when something happens, it's a little hard to, deal with sometimes. But I was in charge of the random list. And we had a driver came in. I loved the guy. He was amazing. He was a great guy. And at no point did I think that he would ever fail a random, but he did. And I had to call him. And so I called him up and I said, man, you failed your random. What is going on? And he is a bigger guy and he kind of chuckled a little bit and he says, oh man. I'm like, well, what happened? And he's like, I knew I shouldn't have let that lot lizard in my truck and snort white substance off of one of my appendages.
So he's using the old Oscar Mayer mirror there is what you're saying.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Oh, this is too good. I just messed up my green screen just because I was laughing at that so hard.
To make this better, I actually did go on Google and Googled if that actually can make you fail a random.
And I assume you got the answer in the affirmative.
I mean, it could, yeah. Fluid.
Well, don't ever say that the H&M Trucking Podcast has never taught you anything, because that's something that I learned today, Sherry. I had no idea. Unfortunately, probably had to let this driver go, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately, we did. That was tough, but definitely it was a good story. So
great story. Sounds like his experience at H&M, all but the failed drug test, was great, fantastic. He was having a great time out there. Danny, did you know that could make you fail a random? Actually, let me start with another question. Denny, have you ever done that before?
No. No lot lizards ever set foot in my truck. Thank you very much.
I kind of had an idea. I kind of figured. You didn't strike me as that type of guy, but I got to ask.
I did learn something. Speaking of the drug tests, another buddy of mine that we still randomly stay in touch. He was an H&M driver. In fact, he was scared of the back roads up in Montana one time and followed me for like 3 days. Once we got out of Montana, he's like, no, I'll just stick behind you. Anyway, he apparently went to, I think it was a Memorial Day picnic, was like a potluck. Friends and family all gathered. Everybody brought stuff.
Oh,
apparently, somebody brought some cookies or brownies or something, and yeah, he tested positive. And I never would have thought of that, but after that, I was careful about food that I ate.
So it literally was a potluck.
Yeah, it was a pot/luck.
Yeah, I guess it was.
You gotta be careful, man. I went to a housewarming party once with a bunch of hot shots, smoke jumpers. These guys they have to maintain a certain weight because they're so heavily packed when they get into the plane, and they can't have the plane be overweight when they're going to jump into literal forest fires. And so they really watch what they eat everywhere I've been around them. And this one plate of brownies was sitting on the table at the housewarming party. And I've been watching this poor guy, snack on carrots and celery all night. And I see him finally have a moment where he goes, I'm going to have this damn brownie. Like, I'm within weight. I've done good this week. I'm going to have a brownie. 8 hours later, he was at the emergency room because, it was a pot brownie, but he didn't know what was wrong with him because he was very, by the book smoke jumper. They have to pass drug tests too. Long story short, the doctor came to all of us in the waiting room and goes, he's just high. Kind of dismissed the whole thing like it wasn't going to be a multiple $1,000 trip to the emergency room and all the rest of it. But you got to be careful out there. You can't let the lot lizards into your truck if you don't expect some shenanigans. Let's just put it that way.
Definitely a shenanigan.
Definitely. Well, Sherry, such a great story. I hesitate to ask if you have any other ones that you might want to tell us that popped up in the time that we've been thinking about this. But any other stories where something like that happened, or something that you could not believe came across your board?
There's a lot of things that I can't believe come across my board, but probably none of them I can tell on the podcast.
That's kind of what I figured we were going to get out of you, and rightfully so. Well, thank you so much for coming on here for a short minute to tell Denny and I this story. I'm going to have to go and roll my back out now because when I get to laughing like that, my whole core hurts. I need to work out more, but conversation for another time. Sherry Vogler, thank you so much. We'll be in touch soon, okay?
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
See you, Sherry.
See ya.
Joining us next here is a gentleman that we've had on plenty of times, but it's been a little while since we talked to him. On the line with us right now, we've got hopper driver Tom Woods. Tom, thanks for being here, my friend.
You guys are so very well.
Well, we love having you, and this episode was one of those ones where I thought we got to have Tom on for this one, because I know in all the times I've talked to Tom, there's plenty of stuff that you can't make up that's happened to you, and I know you've brought some stories for us here today, but I also wanted to give our fantastic co-host here, Denny, his chance at this, because I know Denny's got a lot of stories. I've heard a lot of them off the mic and on the mic. But Denny, as far as you can't make this stuff up, when I told you about that, how did the thought process go? And all the millions of miles you've driven, I mean, you've got to have thousands of these stories, but what ones float to the surface?
Well, the first one that popped into my head was I was running reefer. This is long before I went to work for H&M. And I think it probably was back before I even had a navigation system. So, you'd take down good directions and look at the map. And like I said, I was running reefer. So I was going to a grocery warehouse. Anybody who's been there will know the one I'm talking about. It's in Dacula, Georgia, which is just kind of northeast of Atlanta. And the boss gave me directions. He says, okay, well, get on I-85 North, take 316. That's going to turn into US 29. And when you see Jesus, get in the left lane. I'm like, what? He goes, I got to go. And that was it. Those were my directions. So I'm like, okay, what else can I do? I did have the address. So I figured, okay, well, let's go for it. I made it down there. And as I got closer, there is a giant billboard, and that's all it says is Jesus. Got in the left lane, and there it was.
Hey, perfect. So really a functional landmark there when you see Jesus. Now,
I was expecting to see some guy in a robe standing out on the side of the road waving. I didn't know what.
I got figured this all out, guys. This is not even funny. When he said you're going to see Jesus, I figured he's going to hit him down a dead-end road. He's going to drive off a cliff somewhere.
That's what I thought. What if a four-wheeler had to cut you off and put you in the ditch before that sign? Would you have assumed that was seeing Jesus and it was time to get over?
Honestly, I really didn't know what to think. And like I said, I tried to get more information, and he was just kind of halfway chuckling and went, I got to go, and hung up.
Up here on, I believe it's on I-5, up in about central Washington, somewhere between Portland and Seattle, there is a religious group that lives out in kind of a, I don't think it's off-grid, but they live out of a town. They're in their own little commune. And there's a big billboard out there that says Jesus saves. And then there's all of this crazy abstract artwork that stands as high as probably 30 or 40 feet in the air. And every time I drive by it, Denny, I think Jesus saves, but your artwork is going to kill people because I can't stop looking at it. I have not figured out what it is yet. I think it's just a shortcut to meet Jesus if you really want to, if you're rubbernecking too much. But great story there, Denny. Thanks for sharing it. Tom, we're on to you now. I know you got some stuff in your pocket for us. What's coming to the surface right now?
I mean, I know we talked about people watching TVs and all that, but about a month and a half ago, I am literally flipped out because this guy has got his foot on that handle right there by the door, and he's got his leg leaning up against the steering wheel, and he is going down the road, and he is not even paying attention. He is texting the driver with both hands and using his leg to steer the truck with. No joke. You can't make that shit up.
No, you really can't. You want to talk about a death wish? I mean, I've seen people drive. I had a buddy once that followed me on a road trip in a Honda Civic, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and I saw a foot next to his side mirror. And he was driving a stick shift Honda Civic with his clutch foot hanging out the window. I don't understand. Why do you need to be so comfortable when you drive? Tom, have you ever felt like you wanted to kick your feet up in the middle of a long drive?
No, sir. My both hands are always on the wheel. My feet, every once in a while, catch me crossing my legs down by my ankles, and I'll be like, no, I might need that real quick. You know what I mean? I might need to stand on those brakes or something. You never know.
Absolutely.
You never know.
And especially with a full load. I mean, even without a full load, driving with your knees is a real dumb idea. But if you're loaded and that wheel just tips a little bit, I assume that'd be a real tough recovery to make. Have you guys ever seen the pictures of, or actually their X-rays? It was like a big deal in the mid 2000s where every passenger princess, as you call them, the lady that's in your passenger seat, wanted to put their feet up on the dash. That was the cool way to ride, was to kick the shoes up and put them up on the dash. Have you guys seen some of the X-rays from some of those accidents where people have their
terrible
feet up on the dash and they hit something? I mean, you'd be lucky to walk again.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
That's terrible. It's terrible. Hey, the other day, I mean, no joke. The other day I was driving down the road, It was a black Honda, a new one, and the girl next to me on her phone, texting and driving with her knee. I was like, honk the horn. I mean, I literally laid the horn on because that's very dangerous. And you know, she done got so used to people honking at her. She has blocked that out. Just kept on texting and driving.
Unbelievable. And these people are out there all around you all the time. Did you guys ever have, and Denny, I'll start with you here. When you were driving, did you ever have one of those kind of come to Jesus thoughts that, oh my God, 80% of the people around me are not paying the attention that they should to the road?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, back before cell phones, you'd see the gal, and she'd have a breakfast biscuit in one hand and her eyeliner in the other, leaning over in the rearview mirror. I'm like, who's driving the damn car?
Eddie is so full of shit. He's talking about a girl that had a skirt on, hardly had a shirt on, and high heels. That's what he was really wanting to say. You know that, right? Eddie was thinking he really wanted to say that.
Well, I'm
a red-blooded American male. I will look at the tatas if they want to hang them out.
Oh, you're perfect for this show, Denny. It's you know what? That's a question I'll ask because it's something that I see, as I'm perusing through the forums online. I'm a part of a lot of truck driver forums just to read and learn about the industry, and I see two different kinds of posts all the time. I see idiot four-wheeler driver posts, and I see how come I never get flashed out here on the road posts. And I didn't know that it was such a big thing amongst trucking culture, but Tom, have you ever been flashed out there by a gal on the road?
Absolutely. White car. She had a pink shirt on, white pants. We're coming through Tennessee, going in towards Nashville, right by the daggum, right there, that last climb before you get to the state line. And she looked up at me and throwed her shirt up. I mean, it was just, it's like, heck yeah, give him a honk, going through Alabama, some college girls, there's like a carload of college girls, looked like they was throwing her Pensacola during the summertime. I was going down to Mobile to deliver. Heck, three of them in the back seat, throwing all the shirts up. I mean, yeah, give them a honk, have a little fun with it,
Give them a honk. That's the least you can do at that point in time. I mean, we've used this phrase a lot of the times that he's doing God's work. That person's doing God's work. Those ladies were really doing God's work that day, weren't they, Tom?
Oh, absolutely.
Denny, did you ever
get when I was? Well, yeah, but I didn't get the young college girl. I got the one that was about like Mama Cass size.
Oh, God.
But what y'all just reminded me of was a buddy of mine in radio. We've all been in radio. We had to go and host these things at some nightclub or bar or whatever. And he had me along one time helping out. And he says, I want to show you my favorite contest because they had a bunch of stuff to give away. He says, first three gals to give me your bra will get this T-shirt. Well, you see about a dozen of them go hauling ass into the restroom, right? There were two or three of them that walked right up to the stage, ripped their shirt off, ripped their bra off, and handed it to him.
That's what I'm talking about.
Winners!
See why that's my favorite contest?
Oh, man.
I got one for you guys.
Okay.
What about nicknames for coworkers? Okay? I'm going to throw one in there. Ego. Where the hell did he go?
Okay, I know you've got more of them than that. Keep hitting us with them.
Okay, MasterCard. The guy who wants to take credit for everything.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Everybody knows somebody like that.
Blister.
He's writing these down.
Only shows up after the work's done.
Blister only shows up after the work's done, huh?
Right.
Oh,
and
shit.
then I got one more. Toothpaste. I got two more. Toothpaste.
Okay.
The guy who needs his mouthwash out because he's always talking shit on the job.
Well, I think that you might have just given me a new CB handle there, Tom.
And then I got my nephew. I got to throw him out there. One of the laziest guys I ever met in my life. He's all about suing people, Waiting on a lawsuit right now. We call him Lawsuit. Waiting on an easy payday.
Yep. Okay. Well,
You know,
you told me about this the other day, and I went to look up some of these on my own, and I've actually got some here for you, Tom. How about Kit Kat? You imagine what I might call somebody Kit Kat for?
No, what?
Always taking a break. Always on break. You guys have known those guys, right?
I thought stripper name.
Well, that'll work there, too. How about butter knife? You call somebody butter knife, that's because they're definitely not the sharpest tool in the box there.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one.
I've known plenty of people like this, especially working retail in the past. E.T., because they always want to go home.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I like that. That's really a good one.
I know a buddy of mine that works construction, and he would say that every one of his coworkers could be called Lantern because they're not very bright and they always have to be carried.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Yeah.
Aren't these good? Aren't these good?
Oh, yes.
I got one more for you, and that is deck chair. We call somebody deck chair because they always fold under the pressure.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's a good one. That's even better.
I've always been a big nickname guy. I don't know why, but maybe it's growing up with gamer tags, and when I was young, I've said this before, I always wanted a CB handle when I was a young kid, and I don't know what it is, but just a good nickname feels so much more enduring when I'm saying it to somebody. If I call you by your nickname, I really like you. And I don't know,
yeah.
but that's because I've never been given the nickname Kit Kat because I'm lazy. My nickname kind of came from a positive place. Do either one of you guys have anybody ever bestowed a nickname on you?
Well,
No,
I had
I know of.
my CB handle and my road name when I was riding a motorcycle. They were the same thing, but that you kind of bestow that on yourself.
Okay, and what was your road name?
Cherokee.
Cherokee. Okay. Yeah.
Mine's Texas 5150. You know anything about what 5150 is?
I don't.
It's the call sign for the mentally insane. Or I'm the Texas crazy man out here driving. You know what I mean?
So if the cops have a 5150, it means they don't need cuffs. They need a straight jacket. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm trying to tell you. You know, you got to be crazy to be out here today. You know, out here on the road driving a truck. It ain't like it used to be.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. You know what? I found one more nickname that I think you guys are really going to like here. This one actually has a story attached to it. This is a guy from Australia who worked with a guy who had a medical affliction where he had one leg shorter than the other, and they called him the sniper's nightmare.
What's that?
Well, because when he's walking, because he's got one leg shorter than the other, his head's always bobbing from one side to the other. So.
Y'all going to hell for that one. Y'all going to hell for laughing. Y'all going to hell for laughing.
Denny, before we get off here and let you go, is there any other stories that you have, Denny? I know you said you got a few for us, but we'll get to some more of them a little bit later. But is there anything else you want to tell us about? You can't make this stuff up while we still got Tom on the line.
Well, I can tell you about the time I went across the Loveland Pass. Actually, 2 times. First time, of course, if you've got a hazmat load, you can't go through the tunnels at Breckenridge and Vail. So you have to go on the windy little highway that goes way up over the mountains, like 12,000 feet high.
With your hazmat.
Yes, seriously. First time I did it was middle of a dark night, no moon, just black as can be, snow and ice. I'm slipping and sliding, but of course, snow and ice, you do that a little bit. You're used to it. You compensate. I'm only doing 15, maybe 20 miles an hour, and still I'm slipping and sliding. And I thought, well, hell, it took me a long time to get over it, but I got down to the bottom and everything was fine. And then just a few weeks later, I went across Loveland Pass in the daytime. And I got to see, you look over the side and you got a wall of mountain on the left side, and on the right side, it goes down like 3,000 feet.
Wow.
I'm like, this is what I was slipping and sliding on?
Oh, yeah.
If I'd have been able to see it the first time in the snow and ice, I don't know. I might have just stopped my truck and went, y'all just come on around. I ain't going anywhere.
Right, because you're not going to back off that mountain either. I mean, that's terrifying. So Did you ever have to drive it again after you knew what was there in the dark?
I think I did one more time. I think I only did Loveland Pass 3 times, but that second time, seeing what I was driving on the first time, I mean, my butt was clenched the whole way.
I was going to say, you got a crease
my
in your
cheeks
seat.
were holding onto the seat, you know?
I know Denny knows where I'm talking about. 15 and 70 right there in Utah where it hits 70.
Mm-hmm.
Over there after you coming out of Vegas over there. And
Right.
I was not working for H&M at the time at all. It's been years ago, back in like 2000. So they sent me and another guy to California to do some work. And we come out of California, and we was talking about, man, I sure be nice to see some deer, some elk, and all that. And the guy's over here driving. My co-pilot, he's over here driving. It's his time to drive. And he says, it ain't like standing in the middle of the damn road, Woods. He says, I said, well, maybe they are. Maybe they ain't. I'm not joking. We turn on 15 and we go right over that first hill coming up good there down on 70 there. Guess what was standing in the middle of the road? About 200
A whole
head of deer.
herd.
Wow.
About 200 head. And I said, oh, really? They don't just stand in the middle of the road? And I'm telling you right now, I mean, you just wouldn't believe it until you've seen it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, you know?
It's nuts, man. I actually just last year going home for Christmas, I had to stop dead on Highway 82 in Northeast Oregon because a herd of about 50 elk jumped the barbed wire fence and came right across the highway, and I was the first car in line. First of all, I will say, one of the coolest things I've ever seen, to see a herd all move as one like that and, you know, bound over those barbed wire fences and everything. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely trace my tracks by the skid marks and not the ones on the road, the ones in my seat, because they move fast, man. They get out there in front of you in a quick hurry, and they'll do some damage for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I also know the rule of thumb when it comes to deer and elk as a lifelong hunter. The rule of thumb is they're always where you don't expect them to be. And they're always going to show up when you least expect them to show up. So sounds like they were going right along with their laws of nature there, Tom.
It's always crazy too, because when during hunt season, you got a day of doe season only, and all the bucks show up, and then you got buck season only, buck day only, and then you got all these does that show up. You know,
Yep.
It's like they know.
Yep.
You know, when you know, you know.
And people will call them dumb animals. Oh, man, I tell everybody, I say, why do you hunt? You just like to kill things? I say, you overestimate the amount of times I win out here. I lose like the Detroit Lions. For 30 years I lost before I finally killed something. So, you know, it happens, but they're a smart animal, and they definitely know when to stay the hell out of the way. So,
I want to throw one more thing in there, and it ain't got nothing to do with what we're talking about. I just want to tell everybody, if you really want to lose weight out here, you could do it. I got to brag about myself.
Yeah, do it.
8 months ago, I weighed 290 pounds. I want to let you know that I weigh 250 pounds today.
Wow.
Good for you.
Good for you. So what's the secret, Tom? How have you been doing it?
I mean, if people don't listen, that's fine. I tell everybody, because we got a driver that works for H&M to come out of California and moved to Texas. He lives about 2 blocks over from my house there in Texas. He told me I need to stop using cooking oil. I need to stop using all this artificial stuff. I need to start eating meats and good vegetables and stop eating canned food, eat fresh stuff. And that's what I started doing. Like right now, I got a cooler sitting next to me, and it's got 12 steaks in there, and I got fresh sausage, and I got fresh meats in the refrigerator, and I'm gonna get some veggies tonight. But I'm telling you, if you eat right, you'll drop it. I went from a size 40 pants to a 38. Now the 38s don't even fit me now.
Wow, that's awesome, Tom. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. And,
it's not easy to do.
saying.
That is not easy to do. And the reason that I love it when drivers share those types of stories on the podcast here is because, you know, way back when we've talked to Dr. Mark Manera a couple of times on this podcast about staying fit on the road and different tips. And there's always one point that Dr. Manera drives home, and that is, this is not a roadmap that works for everybody. You've got to figure it out for yourself. What works for you? What types of steps can you take to make your day a little bit healthier?
You know, I had for 4 years, what you're saying, for 4 years, I've had 100 people, maybe 1,000 people try to tell me, this is what you should do. You need to do this. You need to do that. And finally, God puts a person in my life that says, hey, this is what you're doing wrong. You're eating stuff that's killing you. You know, almond milk is very, 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 very bad for you. Almond milk is very bad for you. You know?
Yep, I've heard that too.
I've never seen a tit on an almond.
No, but they said almond milk is bad for you. It takes everything out of you. And I loved almond milk, vanilla almond milk. I loved it with my oatmeal. You know, I like putting it in there with my oatmeal. I stopped doing all that. I used to park as close as I could to the truck stop to get in the door. Now I park in the very back of the truck stop just because I enjoy walking again.
Yep.
I haven't done that in like 6 years.
You know, they say that every pound that you lose, Tom, takes 4 pounds of pressure off of both of your knees.
Oh, absolutely.
And I bet you can feel that, can't you?
Yes. And in 2021, in October the 28th, I weighed 325 pounds. Got the picture to prove it. It was at my daughter's wedding.
Oh, man, we're proud of you out here, Tom. We really are. And thanks for sharing that, too. I know that sometimes those aren't always the people's favorite things to share that they're going through.
Right. I'm just saying, you know, you can do it if you really, really want to. You know, you can't go down and buy Chester's and Lester's at the Lowe's truck stop every time you go in there and chow down on that stuff. That stuff's killing you, man.
Yep.
You know?
And to Denny's point, he's never seen a tit on an almond, but you saw one on Mama Cass Jr. that one day, didn't you? That harrowing day that seared into your brain, Denny.
Right. Well, I just want to say out to everybody at H&M Trucking, you know, you guys be safe out there. I enjoy being on the show. My prayers go out to everybody for safe travels. So.
All right, Tom. Well, we enjoy having you, my friend, and thanks for coming on and having a good time with us during our You Can't Make This Stuff Up segment. I'm going to keep piling on the nicknames. I'm going to keep doing research. I'll keep finding those, and the next time we have you on, we'll have a handful more nicknames to go through, okay?
Yes, sir. Me too.
All right. You take it easy, Tom. Be safe out there, all right?
Thank you, sir.
Joining us next here on the H&M Trucking Podcast for our episode about things that you absolutely cannot make up, we've got Arvin Knox Jr., H&M driver, with us. Arvin, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
Now, Arvin, your story is particularly, I will say, interesting and mind-blowing all at the same time. I'm going to start off here by setting this up a little bit and talking about, now, if I'm not mistaken, you were at the Georgia Welcome Center in Port Wentworth, Georgia, back in late February this year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And for those of us that are following the news out of the trucking industry, of course, this was the scene of a very tragic accident, very fiery, very much ran on the news, lots of news coverage of this. It turns out what happened here, Arvin, is that a driver had a medical emergency and ran their truck kind of at full speed right into a parked truck where another driver was sleeping. The driver of the truck that had the medical emergency, as well as the driver of the truck that was asleep, were both killed in this accident, unfortunately. But your story here starts out a little bit sooner, a little bit earlier in the day. Arvin, can you tell us what went down when you were at the Georgia Welcome Center back in late February?
Yes, I was pulling into the Welcome Center there, and I was actually thinking about pulling down towards the exit out of the Welcome Center, and I had a gut feeling that would be a good spot. So I moved around and got back towards the front, and I was parked the truck like 5 rows in, and it was about 7 o'clock. I was fixing something to eat in a semi, and I felt my truck shake. And I looked outside and there wasn't no rain, no wind or nothing. And I looked out the front and I heard a big crash, and then I seen an explosion of fire and smoke. And I was like, oh no, that ain't right. And that guy came in there, he was running about 60, 70 plus mile an hour. And it just totally flipped my mind. I'd partner for 15 years. It just triggered a whole lot of stuff.
I imagine so. So, Arvin, what I'm sufficing this to say here is that had you not had that weird gut feeling, this would have been you that would have taken the brunt of this hit from this guy coming off the exit there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. I would have been the one that got hit. The trailer would have tipped over on the cab of the truck.
Man. Danny, I know that you saw this happen, or I know that you saw the news coverage of this happen. What goes through your mind as a retired driver when you see something like this? And did you ever have one of those gut feelings like Arvin had here when you were out there where just something didn't feel right and you got yourself out of trouble before there was actually trouble that happened?
I had gut feelings all the time, and I've just never argued with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, don't walk in between these two trailers, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, maybe it was nothing, but I just didn't argue because I thought that might be the man upstairs talking to me. And Arvin, I thank God you're still here and you're still with us. I would rarely park on the exit ramp. I almost always found a truck stop or a rest area or somewhere that I felt a little safer. But, you know, many times over the years I've had to, just because I was running out of hours and I had to find a place to park. But I would always take the exit ramp, go past the road, and then park on what we call the get on ramp for that very reason. Because if somebody did come off of that ramp going too fast or without control, I figured there was less of a chance of getting hit on the get on ramp than the exit ramp. So, yeah. And like you said, that little voice, I never ignored that little voice.
So it's a really important little voice. Arvin, have you found yourself really listening to your gut more since this happened? You said this triggered a lot of things in you. How's this kind of changed you as a driver after this whole event transpired right in your backyard?
Well, I always listen to that gut feeling and that little voice. I always listen to it. And it just, that night, it just, you know, working in the fire department for 15 years, it just, after seeing that, I mean, it just brought back a lot of memories.
Sure. I'm sure. Was it hard for you to get back on the road the next day and continue your route? Did you have to take a couple of days to kind of collect yourself and process this whole thing, or did you just get right back on the road and get moving?
I got right back on the road, but I was still telling myself, done and over with, there ain't nothing we can change about it. I got to keep going.
Sure. And, you know, sometimes I find at least getting back to routine, getting back to the things that you're used to doing can kind of help clear your head and allow you to process things a little bit better because you're not just sitting there staring at the wall thinking about all the bad stuff. You've got to keep your mind on the job. And on those little moments when you have a few free minutes and there's nobody around you and you can just kind of think, maybe that's when you process it. Did you find it kind of that being on the road helped you deal with this situation?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah, absolutely. I got to keep moving to keep the mind going and keep it off things.
For sure.
Well, he mentioned being a firefighter, and I'm an old firefighter as well. And I know there are things I saw in, you know, both the Marine Corps and firefighting that your training and your professionalism take over in that moment. And then it may be hours, days. Usually for me, it was days. It was 3-4 days later, it would hit me like a ton of bricks when I finally caught my breath and whatever happened that in that instance just came down on me. And, I just kind of wanted to be alone. I didn't want anybody to mess with me. It wasn't that I, broke out in tears or fell apart or anything. It's just all of a sudden you realized the tragedy.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, Arvin, can't tell you enough how happy we are for you and your family that you did listen to your gut this time around, and it sounds like you listen to it every single time it speaks to you, my friend. And I know that this stuff probably isn't easy to talk about. This isn't something that you'd probably get real excited about rehashing. I would assume this isn't a story that you're super excited to tell whenever you get the chance.
I don't get excited about it, but I do find, if I do talk about it, it actually helps me get over it. But, I got pictures on my phone of that night, and it was just Ashley Furniture Company lost the truck and the trailer due to the fire. And it's sad because that guy, if he did have a medical emergency, I can understand why he did it. But if he didn't, then he was just out for suicide, period.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the tough part about it. And that question will never really get answered, unfortunately. And this sounds so terrible, but I will say I hope for all things good that he did have a medical emergency and that this wasn't somebody that had lost their way. And, obviously we've talked about it on this podcast a lot. Mental health is a big part of staying healthy enough to still be a trucker and keeping on top of your mental health. And if this was him trying to take his own life, it's even more tragic by the fact that he took somebody with him. But we'll just hope against hope that that's not the case. And a lot like you said, Arvin, part of dealing with these types of situations is you do have to take a step back and realize that it happened and there's nothing you can do about it. And learning to deal with just the thoughts in your head are the only thing that you're left with. And we're just glad that you're still out there and rolling and you're making money for your family and everything like that. And you've come out of this as well as you have, Arvin, because I know that that's not everybody. There's a chance that somebody that didn't have the experience in firefighting that you did and didn't have the experience in trucking that you have might not have handled this situation as well as you did. And I just am very happy that for you that things worked out like they did, Arvin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one thing we can say is if your gut tells you something, listen to it. If it voice tells you something, listen to it because they won't steer you wrong.
Yeah, and they won't tell you twice either. That's the other thing. You don't have a chance to second guess that voice. If you're going to listen, you got to listen. And it's a great lesson to be learned here from your experience, Arvin. And thank you so much for coming on to tell this story. We really appreciate it. And we'll get you back on the podcast to talk about something sometime in the future that's a little bit brighter subject, okay?
Oh, that's fine. That'd be better.
All right, Arvin. Well, you stay safe out there, my friend. Keep the shiny side up, and we'll be in touch with you, okay? Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Man, great stuff there. I really am impressed with Arvin's ability to tell that story, Denny. I can imagine if that were me, just knowing my emotions and the way that I deal with things that are that impactful, I don't think I would be able to tell that story without having to stop and take some breaks, man. If you read that article or saw any of the news coverage, that was just an absolutely tragic deal. And one of our guys could have been the guy had he not listened to his gut. Yep. It's just amazing.
I don't know what else to say. I'm glad he's here, but it's still tragic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our hearts go out to the families of everybody lost and everybody affected by that, because it is, part of what we talked about there at the end. Those ripples go out a long ways. It goes, obviously they are the most violent for the families, the ripples in the water, but all first responders, everybody that dealt with that, definitely has that hanging over their conscience, and Arvin as well. So just thank our lucky stars that he's still around to tell the story. And, we'll move on to something here that is just a little bit lighter hearted. That was one that I knew was going to be tough to get through, and I'm still glad that we told that story because I think that lesson is so important. My mom used to tell me that going back to when I was a little kid, before I'd go to stay over at a friend's house or before I'd go, on a baseball trip or something like that. She'd always say, always listen to your little voice. And back then I kind of always just poo-pooed it. There is a giant life lesson to be learned by listening to your little voice. And those gut feelings are something that you can't fake. So it's good for us to always be listening to them. But I know that you have a couple more stories here for us that kind of fall in line with you can't make this stuff up. So time for me to shut up and let you do what you do best, Denny, and that's tell some stories.
Well, first one, I may have shared this with you before, but my buddy Roland, and he quit trucking many years ago. But one of his last jobs, after being a over-the-road 48-state trucker for many years, he needed to stay closer to his mom and dad. They were in failing health. And so he came home to Florida and got a job driving a dump truck. And they were working on US 1 for many, many years. In fact, probably they planned it well so they can keep fixing it. Because what they would do is they'd fix a section, then they'd drive over that section with dump truck and concrete mixing trucks and tear it up so they could replace it again. But anyway, it was along one of those stretches of US 1 in Brevard County. The Space Coast is what they call it. They're close to Cocoa Beach and the Kennedy Space Center and all that stuff. And I guess he was distracted that day. He forgot to put the bed down, and he ripped out every power line across US 1 for about 5 to 7 miles.
You're kidding me, and he never noticed it, just kept going?
Just kept on tearing them down.
It's like, man, I thought they repaved this road, but it's a little bumpy, I would think.
That day marked his retirement date.
When was that a forced retirement? Is that what it was, or did he actually
I think he lost that job, and it
still?
might have proven difficult to get another one. I'm not sure, but yeah, kind of felt bad for old Roland on that one.
Oh man. I guess so, man. But hey, I mean, if you're an over-the-road trucker for that many years, putting your dump bed down is not something that you've ever had to think about for all those years in your career.
If you ever drive down the road and you see construction zone, they have a sign that says power lines pointing up. Maybe that's why. They heard about Roland.
Well, I don't have the authority to give him a free pass on this one. He sounds like a good guy. I'll just say I'm glad that nothing happened to him in that, because obviously that could be pretty dangerous too. All that electricity and downed wires and everything probably could have been a lot worse than what it ended up.
And I got one more. This one isn't a trucking story, but it definitely qualifies for the you can't make this shit up. Oh, stuff up.
Okay. Either way, I think we're still okay. I by the way, I ran this by some of the powers that be, and I said, what are you guys expecting us to say, just so I have a little bit? And they said, let's try to maintain it as best we can so that, it still remains sort of family friendly. And I think we're only like 2 or 3 S-bombs in, Denny, and I would say anything inside of 5, we're still all right. So you're good to go.
Okay,
you can't make this shit up. Hit me with it.
Reminiscent of a Jimmy Buffett song, it's time to put your fingers in your kids' ears before I tell this story. This was...
That's 2 weeks in a row for you, Denny, not knowing if you're going to make it past editing.
This was my ex-wife, and I can't stress that enough. This is not my wonderful Dawn that I've been married to for a long time. This is my ex-wife. And I'll preface this by saying this lady was brilliant. She was as smart as she could be. She actually was a technical writer, which if you don't know what that means that she took computer speak from the geeks and wrote computer manuals. Okay. So she was very smart, but she didn't have a lot of common sense.
Okay.
Anyway, not long after we got married, it might have been my birthday, I'm guessing, or some special occasion. She actually reached out to my little sister to get my grandmother's recipe for chicken fried steak. because we were in Florida. We weren't in Texas. You can't find a decent chicken. In fact, most of the world calls it country fried steak. And they go, you want brown gravy? No, that's not chicken fried steak. So anyway, she's going to make this wonderful meal for me. She got the recipe from my sister, my grandmother's recipe. And she made it. When we were sitting down to dinner, it was good. And she said, well, you're lucky I made this. I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate that, blah, blah, blah. She goes, no, you don't understand. I was at my third supermarket when the butcher called me to the side and explained to me, honey, what you want is cube steak, not tube steak.
All the intelligence in the world can't save everybody.
Run that one by your sensors.
Oh, man. Well, thank God she finally met a butcher that had a heart and wasn't just going to go back in the back and enjoy trashing on her for it. I mean, poor gal. Well, so I do have a question here because you're right. Where I come from, it's country fried steak. I've always called it chicken fried steak, but now that you said that, I'm thinking about every single menu that I see it on over here, and it is country fried steak, not chicken fried steak. And I've seen it served with like a thinner brown gravy before, but over here we get it with kind of a thicker, almost would remind you of like a biscuits and gravy type gravy, not necessarily with sausage in it, but a thicker, lighter gravy, lighter in color.
We call it
Is
cream
that
gravy.
The gravy that you prefer?
Other places, they might call it white gravy.
Okay.
I think Cracker Barrel calls it pepper gravy. It's a reasonable facsimile, but it's not the same thing. When I was a kid growing up, a chicken fried steak would be a round steak, an entire round steak tenderized. A lot of times the bone was still in it. And they would serve it on one of those oval plates, it's about yay big, and it would be hanging over the sides. They'd have to bring in your French fries or whatever on a different plate because that thing would fill the plate. When we moved back to Texas and settled here in New Braunfels, I went on a search for the best chicken fried steak in town, and I tried a bunch of them. And I won't say that any of them were bad, but the best one I found, believe it or not, is at my favorite Mexican food place. So I go in and I have a dilemma. I love Mexican food.
Oh, yeah?
I love chicken fried steak. Which one do I want?
You know how I would answer that question every time, Denny, is I guess I'll just come back tomorrow.
Occasionally I talk Dawn into splitting something with me. What we'll do is she'll order a big meal and I'll order chicken fried steak and we'll just eat off each other's plates.
Yeah, well, I have to admit something to you. I was a very picky eater growing up, and I've been a lot better. I know my way around the kitchen pretty well now, which has helped me try a lot of things in a format where I can actually enjoy them rather than, trying things as a kid the first time is it's like, well, it's just liver and onions. Just try it. And you never get out of the blocks. I never liked gravy as a younger kid. I was a ketchup kid. I know. And I'm about to tell you that for the first probably 20, 30 chicken fried steaks I ever had in my life as a young kid, I really loved them, and I loved them with ketchup. I'd tell them put the gravy on the side, and I would put a big dollop of ketchup on my plate and cut it out and dip it in ketchup. How much do you want me to just go away for saying
First
that
of all,
right now?
When I was a kid growing up, I would forego dessert if there was gravy. If there was gravy left after the mashed potatoes, I'd put it on white bread. I'd put it on anything. I love gravy. And second thing is, do you know why ketchup was even invented? Way back when food preservation was not the science that it is today, meat would be going rancid and you'd still eat it because, folks, anyway, and that's why to mask the taste.
Really? I did not know that. And I am a giant ketchup fan. When I was a kid, I liked ketchup so much, Denny, that my parents would take me to like a McDonald's or a Wendy's, and I would take the fries and dip them in the ketchup and lick the ketchup off of them and toss the fry away. So I had some issues trying to figure this whole eating thing out as a child, but I promise you, in my 40 years now, I've come further in through. I used to not touch mustard. I didn't eat mustard until I was probably 17, 18 years old. but now I have like 7 kinds of mustard in my fridge. So there was an evolution somewhere in there. I am good with cream gravy, good with the white or the pepper gravy. I've never actually tried brown gravy on a chicken fried steak. I like a good thin brown gravy, but feels like it might spoil
That
it.
goes on like Salisbury steak or something.
Or potatoes, like some mashed potatoes with some brown gravy.
You live up there in the
that's
Northwest. When I was in Idaho one time, I think it was Idaho, I got fries, and this was at a fast food place. And they said, do you want fry sauce? Fry sauce? What's that? Yeah, fry sauce. It was like ketchup, mayonnaise, and pickle juice, I think, or something like that.
A little bit of relish. It's sort of made, I think, in the vein of like a Thousand Island dressing, if you will, but there's the good ones. You're right. They will add some sort of pickle element to it, whether it's just a splash of pickle juice or they actually throw some relish in so it's got a little texture to it. The lazy ones, what you'll know when they just say you want some fry sauce and they don't sound excited about it, it's just half ketchup, half mayonnaise. It's a burger sauce more than it's a fry sauce, I think, but I don't know, Danny. We do weird stuff up here in the Pacific Northwest. They got eggplant on pizza up here, and I'm just not okay with it. There's so many things that we've tried up here. The Pacific Northwest doesn't really have its own regional cuisine. What it has is a little bit of everybody else's regional cuisine kind of.
I call bullshit on that. You have elk.
Well, okay, yeah, that's true. But we're not.
We don't get elk in Texas. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, you caught me there. Well, I'll tell you what. You got to make it out here sometime, and I can get you some elk. Send it home.
And you got those giant oysters.
Oh yeah, those things are good, man. Little dollop of hot
Gulf
sauce
Coast
in there.
oysters are like this big.
Oh man, our oysters will get huge.
Just took me out for those one time in Olympia, and those damn things are as big as a chicken thigh.
Yep.
You got to take a knife and fork. You don't stab it and stick it in your mouth. That thing's huge.
The other thing that we have over here, Denny, that they don't grow elsewhere very well is Walla Walla sweet onions. And if you're a fan of onions, first of all, they get like the size of a basketball. They're huge. And they are the sweetest onion that you will ever taste. And there's a regional fast food chain around the Pacific Northwest called Burgerville. And for about 2 weeks a year, you can get their onion rings made with Walla Walla sweet onions. But they don't get, because they grow in a very short season, and they're sold out everywhere. If you find them, buy your weight in them, and you will thank me later, because it's the best onion ring you'll ever have. It's great grilled on a burger. You don't know?
Well, of course, Georgia's got Vidalia onions.
Okay.
And they're sweet onions. And then Texas A&M went, well, we can do better than that. So they developed their own. I think it's called the 1014 or something, or was when they developed it. But those are sweet. I mean, if you're an onion lover, I like them cooked.
Yeah, me too.
I do not like raw onion, but I like them sauteed, fried, whatever. But there are people that'll just pick it up and take a bite out of it like an apple.
Oh, yeah, can't do that. In fact, I have a funny story about that, and then we'll get out of here because we're sort of running out of time. But I was a student body president of my high school my senior year, and that was a mistake in and of itself. But I got to run the assemblies, which was really fun. You can imagine me out in front of the school with a microphone running a pep assembly. I was right in my element. We had to come up with these games to play. And the ideas was always that the freshmen, you played each class against each other, and the freshmen always kind of got the short end of the stick. That was just part of the welcome to high school, and it was like our homecoming game. So, you're only probably 4 or 5 weeks into school at that point. And I went home and I carameled 3 big, beautiful, granny delicious apples, dipped them in caramel, and I had one big red onion. It was the perfect size. And I carameled that sucker too. And what we did is we tied a string around them, and you had 2 people per team. One person hung the caramel apple down, and the other person laid on the gym floor on their back and tried to eat it as fast as they could without using their hands. Well, the sophomore, juniors, and seniors are just cruising through one of the best caramel apples they've ever had. And that poor freshman took his first bite into that onion, Denny, and you saw it in his eyes. And he looked up at me, and of course, I'm standing right over the top of him with a mic, and I just decided, for once in my life to shut up and see what he does rather than saying anything about it. And he looked up at me and he's kind of chewing on it. And he takes a big breath and he goes back in for another bite. I said, hey, that's it. The joke's over. That's a red onion. Yeah, not a big fan of red onions. Uncooked onions, no, you're not going to catch me putting them on a street taco even. I need them to be cooked. Caramelized is best, but I like a good onion ring too, so. Well, that was a little bit of a wild last segment, Denny, but I always enjoy them with you for sure. That's going to put the bow up, wrap this one up, and put it under the tree. Episode 68 is in the books. I just want to say thanks to everybody that joined us today. Sherry Vogler coming on with her story. Definitely one you can't make up. We had
appendages.
Yeah,
found a whole new use for the word appendage now.
Always great to have Tom Woods on. He's always a riot. We have a great time laughing with Tom Woods, and of course, Arvin Knox Jr. coming on to share his story as well. Look, if we've proven anything today through your stories and all the drivers, Denny, it is truly that you can't make this shit up. Stay fresh, cheese bags. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the H&M Trucking Podcast. Please leave a review, subscribe, and connect with Marcus over at the H&M Trucking social media channels. And if you're considering a job at H&M, find us at hmtrucking.com. Until next time, stay safe and ahead of the curve drivers.